Thank you so much,
Thank
Matt.
you.
And thanks for inviting us. It's really an unexpected invitation. As you mentioned, Felicia is a very talented gamelan musician. She plays all five genres of the Cirebon music, and then she also does the Topeng mass dancing. I lead a couple of groups. I just wanted to also, at the outset, thank Ian Martin for making this possible, because he's doing all the tech stuff. He's running the videos and running the slides and stuff like that. And he's also a longtime musician with our group. And he got his degree in ethnomusicology at UC Davis, and he studied with Professor Henry Spiller, who you all know. And he's been invaluable in the dissemination of Cirebonese gamelan. He's produced all of our YouTube videos and made 4 CDs of the 5 types of Cirebon gamelan. So he's running things today. So really grateful for that. Also, we're honored to have 2 very distinguished Cirebonese gamelan experts that will be coming in a little later to speak briefly. Elang Ian Arifudin from Keraton Cirebon, one of the 3 palaces in Cirebon, and also Mama Guru Wario Sela, who's a very experienced gamelan teacher and performer. I'll talk more about him later, but you know, all of the distinguished people here, professors and writers, I feel, for lack of a better English word, malu, you know, in front of all you guys, because you know, you guys are the real academics, and I'm, you know, my main gig is dementia care and Alzheimer's care, and my wife teaches Montessori education, so you know, I don't have a paper to read like other presenters have had, but just some slides and some videos of the different kinds of music, and a story that hopefully will interest you all. But anyway, thanks to Ian for making this possible, because I'm known in Cirebon, one of their nicknames for me is Gaptek, which means, you know, absolutely inept at anything technological. So I do want to apologize in advance for any errors or shortcomings. That you cannot encapsulate an entire culture in an hour, but so please forgive me for any mistakes. But just tell you briefly about how I got involved in this, because it is relevant. I started learning gamelan in 1972 at UC San Diego with Patokro, who, by the way, is a big fan of Cirebon gamelan. He always was asking me for details about Cirebon gamelan, especially the wayang music and gender. And that was with Jody Diamond. So she helped introduce me to gamelan way back in 72. And Cirebon gamelan has been near and dear to me since my very first visit to Indonesia in 1976. Felicia has been playing since 1998. And on that first trip there, my host father, Patnoh Atmadibrata, who's now passed away, he was head of the West Java Cultural Office. He said, "Hey, you want to go to Cirebon?" Because I was there interested in Sundanese music at the time. And I said, "Well, sure, I'm up for anything." And I absolutely fell in love with the people and culture. It was just immediate, you know, and especially, you know, the people in villages, the people in the palaces, especially the gamelan. And I'm going to have to not take that call. So, oh my goodness. Thank you. I haven't heard that jingle in a lot of years.
He might be trying to get in, though, so we might need to send him.
Well, it's there if you want to do it.
Okay.
Sorry, sweetie. So at any rate, I had 4 trips where I went there. Basically, I just wanted to learn what's called Gamelan Prawa, which is their version of Slendro gamelan. But in 1981, I met my main teacher at Keraton Cirebon, and that is the late Elang Yusuf Dindabrata, later Pangeran Haji Yusuf Dindabrata. I told him what I wanted to learn. He said, "Well, that's not really going to work." He really kind of forced me to study all aspects of the culture that he could show me. I mean, even things about glass paintings and wood carvings and the symbolism, and the architecture, and all kinds of music that I'd never even heard of. And he really encouraged me to make audio recordings and make video recordings and take photographs, and told me to make notation. And he sent me to record things you're not supposed to record, and he got special permission for me. And I was just not really, I didn't know what he was after here, but I just kind of, as my teacher, I just said, well, okay, I'll just do that. And then when I came back to America, he kept mailing me material. He'd mail me written stuff and histories, and he'd mail me recordings of old pieces and told me to notify it. And then rather suddenly he passed away. So anyway, I had all this material, and there was a 17-year gap when I didn't go back to Indonesia. And I didn't really know if I ever would. I was raising kids. I moved to Hawaii. And then in 2005, Felicia said, well, when are you going back to Indonesia? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know if I want to talk about that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So when I married Richard, he was, in 1998, he was running the Gamelan community group, one of the groups in Seattle. And it just seemed like it was something that was so big in his life. And over the early part of our marriage, I realized that it was kind of why he's here, what he's here to do. And I felt like that was his life's work, that he's not making his living at it, but it is something that he's doing. And so I encouraged him to go back to Cirebon in 2005. He was off work and not finding work. So it was like, he was saying, well, we can't spend the money for that. And I was like, well, yeah, don't worry. You're not working right now. So go and see everybody and see if things are continuing there. And then he discovered all sorts of things about parts of the music and arts that were faltering and failing. So he'll go into that.
Yeah, and that's true. So I went back after 17 years. I didn't know if anybody would even remember me, and I was standing in the twilight outside of Cirebon, with my little bag, looking in the gate, just going, oh gosh, who do I go see here? I knew my teacher had passed away, and I heard somebody say, "Hey, Mama Eric," which is what they call me there. So my name's Richard, but my Indonesian friends had problems pronouncing Retat. So I said, well, my mom always called me Rick. And they said, Eric? And I said, sure, that's fine. And I didn't really think about it. And Mama just means Mister. So that if you hear Mama Eric, that's why I'm called Mama Eric. So they said, oh, great, good, you're here. And then almost immediately they started talking to me about stuff that had died since I was gone. Not only all these senior gamelan teachers, but whole art forms that were gone, pieces that were lost. They only knew the titles of them because it's not a notation culture. They don't notate things. And if they had some old funky cassette and it got lost, that was it. So many, many pieces, entire art forms were gone. And then they were really hungry to learn this stuff. And I had all this documentation that my teacher had forced me to make. So I shifted my focus. So I went back 8 more times so far. And I've just been sharing recordings and notation and old pictures and videos and helping bring stuff back. Very similar to the work that Von Hatch, the wonderful work that Von Hatch is doing with Mekarbuana in Bali. So anyway, I'm just so grateful that my teacher, Elang Yusuf, had made me document all this stuff. And the tremendous recovery of the arts in Cirebon is really due, especially music, due to the enthusiasm of young artists. But anyway, that's just a little background about me. So maybe, Ian, let's go to some pictures. I just want to situate Cirebon a little bit for some of you might not know. If you could show the first one, thank you. Or maybe the next one. We know that guy. Yeah. So for those of you who may or may not know, Cirebon is an ancient royal city on the north coast of Java. So it's much more north coast than it is West Javanese culturally, at least from our perspective. If you can see by that map is a language map of the island of Java. And West Java is largely Sundanese, and people assume that, well, that's where the Sundanese people live, and that's true. But you can see there's a whole strip along the north coast of Cirebon and Indramayu, and in the far west, the ancient kingdom of Banten. They're Javanese speaking. So you can see that they're Javanese, and when I went there, they call themselves Wong Jawa. They don't say Jowo, they say Jawa, Wong Jawa, and they call their Gamelan Jawa. It's not, so they've got their own dialect of Javanese, a very old form. It's not the more familiar Solanese dialect. But that was the first surprise to me, that they consider themselves Javanese. Lately, they've been sort of revising that, say, well, we're not really this and we're not really that. We're our own thing. But linguists agree, and I'm sure Ed would back me up on this. It's pretty much a Javanese language area. But can we have the next slide, please? But that political division of West Java does not really reflect cultural division. Here's an old map. I don't know when this is from, 1700 something, probably a Dutch map. But it shows you how they used to think of Java, which is east and west, not east, central, and west. And I think that's largely due to, in the Hindu time, there were two really prominent kingdoms. In the far west, there was the Hindu Pajajaran kingdom. And in the east, the far east of the island, there was the Majapahit kingdom. And Cirebon is kind of right on the border. And it wound up inheriting musical traditions and other things from both kingdoms. Can you show the next one, please? So you've heard of Majapahit era, the old Hindu era, and you certainly know about Mataram and Central Java, but there's kind of an in-between transition period that isn't written about as often, and that's the era of the Kotawali, or the Wali city-states. And these were founded by a group of Sufi saints that established small kingdoms. Banten is off the map to the left there, but that's one of them. Actually, Banten was founded by the same person who founded the Sultanate of Cirebon, that's Sunan Gunung Jati. So there was all these Wali states, and that's where the culture and the heritage was really active from, I'd say, around 1400 to 1600, before it really shifted south. The whole power structure shifted south to the areas, what's now Jogja and Solo. But these city-states were destroyed in war. A lot of them burned to the ground during various wars. The great General Sultan Agung, was consolidating his power, we shall say, on the island, and it was looking like Cirebon was going to be next in his sights. So the Sultan of Cirebon, wisely, politically, offered his daughter in his hand in marriage to Sultan Agung. And Sultan Agung says, I accept, and you, the king of Cirebon, are welcome to come live in my palace the rest of your life. So he was basically under house arrest, and he's actually buried there. He's buried across the street, where Imogiri is, where all the Mataram kings are buried. He's buried at Girilaya, which is right across the way. But that's why Cirebon wasn't burned down. And that's why we have an example of one of these old city-states that you can still see in the 21st century. Can you show the next slide, please? So if you heard of Cirebon at all, it's got really minor tourism for non-Indonesians. This is their famous batik style. It's called Megamendung, which can mean dark clouds or rain, heavy clouds. I don't know if you can see, there's a dragon hidden in there on the kind of the left side. He's facing to the right. You see his head and his tongue there. I don't know if I can do anything here. Oh, I can. Yeah, maybe you can see that. Yeah, that's his head. So, and could you show the next slide? So people have heard of that batik, and then the famous mask dancing. This is one of the 5 characters called Topeng Klana. That's what non-Indonesians have heard of. Maybe if they've heard of Cirebon at all, they've heard of that. Can you show the next slide, please? But there is a large tourist industry among Indonesians. And Indonesians go there for, not entirely surprisingly, different reasons. They go there to see the ancient palaces. Cirebon has the oldest Javanese kraton still having the royal family living in it. This one you're seeing, Kraton Kasepuan, the earlier parts of it were built in 1430 of the Common Era. It's very old. And if it looks to you a lot like Bali, with the split gates and the terracotta and the inset china plates and the pavilions and all that stuff, it does look a lot like Bali. That's because these very edifices were built by an architect from Majapahit. They imported him. His name is Raden Sapat. We know his name, and he set up the building. So first parts were in 1430. It was continued in the 1500s. So this is the greatest extent example of Majapahit architecture that you can find in 21st century Indonesia. So Indonesian tourists go there to see that, and it can show the next one, please. And you can see, yeah, they're still there. I mean, this is not just an empty monument. This is a royal family. Who is this? Oh, well, this is the Sultan of Keraton Kasepuhan passed away after a long, after a long battle with cancer recently. And this is his son standing in the center, Pangeran Lukman. So this, oh, well, they've got masks on, so you know it's a pretty contemporary picture because of COVID-19. So yeah, it's still, the Keraton family still lives and works there. Next picture. So people go there to see the things in the palace, and this is one of the ancient sacred relics. This is one of the royal chariots. This was built in I think the 1500s. I've got the date somewhere. It's called Singabarong, or sometimes known as Paksi Naga Liman. Those are three animals. A paksi is a bird. You can see the wings. Naga is like a serpent or a dragon. You can see the head looks sort of dragon-like. And then Liman is elephant. And the interpretation of this is that it's the powers of wind, air, and sea. Some other people say it's the cultural influences. Cirebon being coastal, it was a mix of so many cultures, and the opposite of the Indian kingdoms. In fact, the name Cirebon is, we think it's derived from the word taruban, which means mixture. It's a mixture of cultures. So Persian and Chinese and Arabic and Indian, all of these things mixed together. And that's exemplified in this royal chariot. Next one, please. And the chariot is even pictured in Cirebonese batik. You can see it's recognizably the same Singabarong carriage. And there's the rocks and clouds below and above.
And the split gate.
And the split gate.
Yeah. With the Gayaran on top.
Yeah. Next, please. This is just a detail from that very chariot. You can see all that rocks and cloud symbolism is everywhere. And I won't go into it, the spiritual symbolism in there, but it's a very powerful spiritual symbol. So people go there to see this or to touch it. It's considered magical and blessing and all that sort of thing. What's next? Oh, and they also go to see the meditation gardens. You've probably seen the, what's the one in Central Java called, the Taman Air in Jogja? I'm flipping my mind, the big water gardens there. Somebody knows? I can't hear anybody.
I forget the name of it right now.
Tamansari? Yeah, well, that's just generic. This is also
Tamansari.
Tamansari, yeah, the fragrant garden, yeah. So this is Tamansari Suniragi, Tamansari. Terima kasih, Pak Bambang. And Suniragi was also built in two stages, and like I think it was in the 1400s, in the 1500s, and later added to in the 1700s, and it's a magical, beautiful place. Can you change the slide, please? And people go to see it. This is the inside, and boy, if you like rocks and clouds, this is your place. And it's got that beautiful little tungkupan top, and there's meditation caves in there, and they're considered magical, and people go visit them.
You can get a little lost.
You can get a little lost. Yeah, please have been there. Next, please. Again, this is also reproduced in Cirebon batik. That is a Cirebon representation of the very place that we were just seeing an actual photograph of. Next, please. And Cirebon also has a beautiful tradition of wood carving. And this is a wood carving of that very place, Tamansari Suniragi in Cirebon, carved by a wonderful young carver named Sukardi in Gagesik village. So, and he's also a student of my late teachers. Next, please. So, but really the main thing that a lot of Indonesian tourists go there is sort of a spiritual tourism. They go to visit the shrine of the Sufi saint who was the first sultan Cirebon. His name was Sunan Gunung Jati, and this is it's got the inset plates, as you can see. This is a very holy, palpably spiritual place. It's a really cool place to visit. No matter what your spiritual orientation, I recommend a visit to that. And next, please. And this is the gate that's kept locked all year, and there's 9 tiers going up to his grave. And this is a group of women sort of praying and meditating there. And it's opened, I think, 3 times a year, and they've just opened the gate. So it's a big deal at that moment. So people come there to see that. Yeah. Men and women mixed now.
Women, yes.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, there's the guys there. Next, please. So this is a lot of old architecture. This is a Dutch architecture from, I think, 1910 or something, the Cirebon train station. If you get there, that's the first thing you see. Next, please. And it's that's all the old stuff, but it's a kind of busy place. It's
a big city.
It is.
It's bustling.
That's for sure. That's for sure. It's been around for a while. Cirebon just celebrated its 651st birthday. So it was supposedly 1369. So that's really going back there. I forget. Oh, there's 322,000 people living in Cirebon, and 2.1 million in the larger Kabupaten. Can you show the next, please? And it's got shopping malls and stuff like that. Next. But really famous, especially among Indonesian tourists, for their food. There's a lot of what they call wisata kuliner.
Are you hungry now? Isn't it dinner time on the East Coast?
This is my favorite Cirebonese food. It's called sega jamblang. So sega means rice. And so it's rice on a teak leaf. And the teak trees grow around the sacred shrine, so it's got that thing to it. And you get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you get some chicken and some sambal and some quail eggs, and it's just wonderful. So Cirebon's really famous among Indonesians for their food. They've got wonderful cuisine. Next, please. But you leave town, it quickly turns into rice fields. It's a large rice growing area, and in the background is Gunung Ciremai, which is the largest breakfast time in Bali. Okay, Bon. Selamat makan. So that's the largest mountain in West Java. It's 3,000 meters tall, like 10,000 feet. And it's considered to be the guardian of Cirebon. So that's a little background on the town. Let's start talking about the arts. Next, please. So Cirebon is this amazing, rich, and varied number of art forms. Their glass paintings are phenomenal. Look at this. So this is Arjuna meditating. Mintaraga, you might know it, Mintorogo. I don't know how you would pronounce it. So he's meditating for power and a weapon from the gods. But if you look closely, his body is constructed of Arabic calligraphy. So they love that blending of Hindu and Arabic. Even the blade on his weapon is calligraphy. This was painted by the greatest Cirebon glass painter of the 20th century, Amarastika, and his son, Mas Kusdono, is continuing in his footsteps. So, Ciptoning, yeah, isn't it beautiful? So, please, next. And of course, wayang figures. Unlike Sunda, which is primarily wayang golek, Cirebon has a large wayang kulit tradition, shadow puppetry tradition. Of course, this is everybody's favorite. And Semar is this sort of pre-Hindu guardian of Java. If you look carefully at his jaw, you can see his jaw is down. The Cirebon version, his jaw is moved up and down by the puppeteer, by the dalang, kind of like the Balinese puppets that can talk like that. So next. And sometimes the Semar character his body can also be filled with calligraphy, stylized calligraphy. So
that looks like a glass painting in progress, right? You can see the painter behind it?
Yeah.
So he's gotten the first layers and he hasn't painted the background yet.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Maybe
cool.
that's his door. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can see the person. Oh, thanks. Okay, next please. Wood carvings, I mentioned wood carving. This is a copy of an 1800s wood carving of the Kraton. I just had this commissioned by that same carver, Masukardi, I talked about. And it's a tlawungan, which you might call in Central Java a blawong, for hanging a kris. That's a Cirebonese Chris handle there. Very intricate work. Next, what else do we have? This is Cirebon Chris's are their own thing. If Central Java used to the Ladrang and Gayaman forms, this is a more typical Cirebonese form. They call it Walian, the Wali or the Nine Saints. And that particular handle is classic Cirebonese. It's called Buta Bajang. And you can see how the handle faces towards you. In Central Java, you turn it to the side, like 2-dimension. But you have it facing back behind you when you wear it. So it watches your back. It's a figural type. Next. This is another Cirebonese type, Padma lotus style. Next. This is a detail of a classic Cirebonese handle called Pongpongan. That means butterfly, but it's not a picture of a butterfly. Like so many Javanese things, it's sort of a symbol within a symbol. It's symbolic. The person is bending forward in meditation or prayer, and it's symbolic of the person refining their spirit, so they're reborn at a higher level, much the way that a caterpillar is reborn as a beautiful butterfly. So that's why it's called Pongpongan.
I didn't know that.
No. You heard all my stories.
Now I know.
Yeah. So these old handles there were only old ones around for the longest time. And just, I'd say the last 3 years, there's been a group of young guys, in their 20s, who are learning to carve these what they call gagan, the handles. And they started off, a little rough and not as good as the old ones. And now they're phenomenally beautiful. It's just another example of young people really picking up the ball and really continuing so many Javanese traditions. Next. Oh, so this one, the hilt crossbar thing is supposed to show a ship. There's sometimes kapal kandas, which means the stranded ship, or kapal labu. It's in the pelabuhan, it's in the harbor. And because Cirebon, like all of the coastal states, it was a seaport. It was a maritime, mercantile seaport state. And so the ship is what brought many things to them. It brought the Nine Saints to them, but it also brought commerce and money. And so anyway, that's why that's ship-based. Next. Oh, and here's the boats. Okay. So the boats are beautifully painted. This is for an annual Nadran ceremony, which is sort of a sea ceremony where they take offerings out to sea. But it's a working harbor, and they catch a lot of shrimp. They catch fish too, but they catch shrimp and they make it into the famous trasi, the shrimp paste. And shrimp is an ornament on batik. It's an ornament on the sides of the city hall. And some people even call Cirebon Kota Udang, shrimp city. And at night, when I take a beca back from the kraton, you smell the shrimp paste in the warehouse. It's kind of nostalgic. Next, please. Yeah, you can see how beautiful these boats are painted. Yeah, it's fun to go see them. So the main highway crosses over bridges, and you can just stop and look at these boats anytime. Next. Wood carving. Well, of course, if you're a gamelan guy, like we are, I'm not really a guy, gamelan person, mask carving is very important. This is a famous carver, Ki Warsat, from the northern part of the Cirebon area, from Jakabaru is the name of his sanggar. So he's in Indramayu, and he is a rod puppeteer, the old Indramayu style, but he's a superb mask carver, certainly my favorite. Next. Oh, well, this is one of his masks. I had forgotten that I had a picture of this. This is Panji, one of the 5 or 6 main characters. Oh, thank you, sweetie. You can just take a second and look at how subtle and gentle. So I don't know if it looks like it to you. Oh, Ed says he's gotten some masks from that very sangha. Yeah, they're really having a hard time making it during this COVID time because they're performing artists and they can't perform much. But I don't know if it looks like it to you. You guys know more than I do, but about these things, because I'm sort of in the Cirebon thing here. But doesn't it look kind of halfway between Central Javanese and Balinese a little bit? I feel it does. Feel free to disagree, but that's what it looks like to me. Next. And it's not just guys that do this. Here's a woman mask carver with a huge pile of shavings in front of her, and all those blocks of wood are future masks behind her. They use this wood called kayu jaran, horsewood. It's soft and easy to carve. Next. So in Cirebon, there are 5 classic characters, and they're always performed by a single person in the same sequence. You always start with Panji, and you end with Klana. And they start refined and go more and more the other direction. And there's reasons for all of this. But that's the Cirebon area. Next. But in the northern tip, there in Indramayu, they have 6 rather than 5 types. So they have 2 kinds of Klana, as you can see. These are from that same Sanggar, Jakabaru, that Kiwarsad is in. Really, really nice mask, by the way. Next. So Panji is my favorite. And this is Felicia's Topeng teacher at Karatuk and Cirebon. You want to talk about him a
Tomi
little bit?
Uli, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I studied with him in 2006. And I try to go, when we go back, to keep refining the one dance that I do, which is Topeng Rumyang. Yeah. And he's very patient, but also very demanding, because he wants it to be true to the style. And of course, it's I guess an oral movement tradition, right? So, you want to keep the style correct.
Boy, I couldn't agree with you more about him being demanding. I mean, he's a sweet, refined Javanese young man. But one of our longtime members, Noah Malik, was studying Klana with him, and he just made him dance in the heat for just hour after hour after hour. I think Noah lost like 20 pounds in a couple of weeks just in sweat alone. He would just say, "Lagi, again?" And the correct answer was yes, not, "Oh, I'm tired." You just keep going. So that's why it always makes us chuckle a little bit when somebody after half an hour says, "Oh, I'm kind of tired." I go, "Whoa, don't go to Indonesia. They will make you work." So next, please. There's another variant of Topeng Cirebon, I just mentioned in passing, Topeng Losari, which is right on the border of Central Java. In fact, to get to this village, I have to drive into Central Java, do U-turn, come back, and go to the Sanggar. And they make prominent use of the ancient silk, very old silk slendangs. They're called lokchan. And you can see they have this tremendous back-bending movement called galeong that's distinctive of the style. And so we got to visit some people together on last trip doing that. Let's move on a little bit. Oh, wood carving. Well, it's a gamelan thing. We should talk about wood carving and gamelan stand. This is one of the older gayuran or gong stands in Kraton Katirbonan. That's my teacher's palace. There are 3 palaces, and that's one of them. And you can see it's sort of a cosmic mountain in the center, and then 2 stylized naga heads on the 2 sides. But this sort of soft W shape you find it's all over the place. It seems to be a Buddhist design. You can find it on Borobudur, find it on gong stands, find it in mosques, ancient mosques. So it's a beautiful design, but you'll start to see it everywhere. Next, please. That's the detail of one side. Look at that carving. I mean, it's just so rich and lovely. Next. And here's the center. You can see it's clearly a cosmic mountain image. Next. So this is most likely, I don't think anyone would disagree, the most spectacularly carved Cirebonese gamelan ever. This is gamelan Kiai. You won't be surprised to know it's called Mega Mandun, which is the name of the motif, the cloud motif that Cirebon's so iconic in Cirebon. This is not in Cirebon. This is in the Sona Budaya Museum in Jogja. It was a wedding gift to Mangkurat I around 1650. So this is an old gamelan. When I think one of Panematan Ratu, or one of the Cirebon kings, married the daughter of Mangkurat I, and so this was a wedding gift, and it's been beautifully preserved in Central Java. God bless them for doing it. Next, that's the bonang, by the way. Here's a detail of the gambang. You can see the keys in front. Just every inch is covered with this. Next, and it's been so lovingly preserved. That's a close-up of the bonang. I mean, I don't know about you. There's just I just can't believe it. They're trying to make a copy of it. They're trying to get funding for it in Cirebon to make a copy of it to have one in town. Next. So we mentioned wayang kulit, but wayang golek is also exists in Cirebon. I say exists instead of prominent. There's lots of Wayangolic styles that used to exist. You still find it in Jogja. It's hugely popular in Sunda in southern West Java. Historians think the earliest form was either in Gebang or Subang, two areas in the Cirebon region, but it's nearly died out there, sadly. But I just put this slide up to show you a contrast of two noble characters, very similar character types. The one on our right is the Sundanese Wayangolic, and one on the left is the Cirebonese Wayangolic. Sometimes you'll hear it called Wayang Tepak. Tepak is Sundanese for flat, because the headdress on the top is flat. You'll hear it called Wayang Papak, that's Javanese for flat. But I'll tell you, Cirebon, they just call it Wayangolic. They don't distinguish it from anything else because that's what they're used to. But the puppets are smaller, the features are smaller. They don't tend to have the large supit urang gulung type curved headdresses like that. More like a tied ikat headdress. And you can see he's wearing, it looks to me like pretty close to an actual kris there. So this would be a refined male character in both cases. Next, please. So this shows you a simple contrast between Cirebonese wayang kulit and Central Java wayang kulit. You guys would have to tell me if that is Arjuna on the right. Is it Solo or Jogja? I don't pretend to know. But you can see how the top of the headdress touches the head, where in the Cirebonese it kind of floats in the air. There's a little string holding it there. That's one of the things you can immediately tell it's a Cirebonese puppet, also much like Bali and some East Javanese things too. So there's a little contrast between Cirebon wayang kulit and Central Java wayang kulit. Next, please. And the Gunung puppets, Gunung or Kayon, the one on the left is the Cirebonese one, and there's the elephant figure prominently in the center and the rocks and clouds, and the probably more familiar Central Java one with the tiger and the bull and the gateway in the center. So that's another way to tell right away what you're seeing. The elephant character is interesting. Elephants appear in a lot of Cirebonese art, wood carving and batiks. Some people say it's Ganesha. Certainly foreigners say it's Ganesha because they're used to Indian stuff and Hinduism. Some people call him Sangabwana. It's like the supporter of the world. Some people call him Lindu, which means earthquake, because if he moves, the earth shakes. And people have very strong opinions on these things, but those are just various theories. There doesn't tend to be a lot of agreement on things in Cirebon. It's very classic coastal style. There's 1,000 opinions on everything. Can you change it, please? Oh, and yes, in the Cirebon puppetry, instead of the 4 clowns, there are 9. So you see Samar on the far left, and his 8, I think, sons and grandsons. So some of these you'll recognize. The one that you would call Petrok in Central Java, they call him Tungkring, but they have Gareng and Barong and then Sakarpandan and Bagal Buntung and all these different ones. And it's been speculated that, or it's just said, that they have 9 out of veneration for the 9 saints, the Walisanga, who so brought the arts traditions to Cirebon. A lot of the arts they say were created by the Wali or certainly modified by them. Next. And there's you can close up of the head. That was a painting before. This is an actual puppet. You can see the jaw is hinged there. Dawala, yeah, juga Pak, betul, terima kasih. So that's the Cirebonese Samar. Next, please. And once again, everything is connected to everything. This is why my teacher made me learn everything, because I would have looked at this batik and not known what it was, because I wouldn't have recognized that the headdress design in the upper left is significant, and the kris design and the megamandung. So everything is really connected. So that's why he made me learn a little bit about all these art forms, and that's why I, in turn, am mentioning them all to you, even though this is supposed to be a lecture about music. Next. Music, okay, good. So we're going to talk about 5 genres of gamelan. I'll just mention that doesn't really cover all the music in Cirebon, just like anywhere else. They have well-known frame drum ensembles, terbang and genzring and gembyung, and various kinds of chanting, some with musical instruments, some without, brai and chalawat and majapahit chanting, and those things are read from ancient manuscripts, which are currently being revived by some people up in the Lumayu especially, and also Kraton Kachurbonan, Kitarka, and Kang Mukhtar are really working on reviving all these manuscripts. There's magical trance forms like Sintran, where a young girl goes into trance. There's hobby horse trance dancing. There's Dubus, where people are cut with blades and healed on the spot, or they can dance on glass, and all those things aren't really connected to gamelan, but they're interesting. There's even a Chinese hybrid gamelan-ish music called tokek, and Mama Mario is an expert on tokek. We might talk about that later. But let's talk about gamelan. So there's 5 main types, 3 really ancient types that predate Javanese gamelan, like Pelok Slendro that we know. And they all have a single row bonang. I'll just mention them: gong renteng, dengung, and gong sakati, also known as sakaten. And then, of course, 7-tone gamelan pelok and 5-tone gamelan prava, which is a Cirebon version of slendro. So first is gong renteng. Gong, in addition to meaning the instrument gong, is the ancient term for an ensemble. And you still have this in Bali, right? You have gong kebiar, gong slunding, and all these things. Renteng means in a line, in a row. I mean to tell you guys what you know already. If you speak Indonesian, you know that. But so you can see they are in a row. And there's 3 bonang players. This particular one is at one of the 3 palaces, Kraton Kanuman, at Sanggar Kemuning, a few years back. And the kind of back right there with glasses on is the leader of one of the Sanggars at Kraton Kanuman. And then on the left, Plengkendang, is Elang Ian Arifudin. He's the director of the Dengung.
And he's one of our participants.
Oh, yes. And, Mama Ian.
I think he's here. Yeah.
Thank you. So my point in mentioning that is there's a tremendous amount of cooperation and good feeling among the younger generation, among the 3 palaces. And it was not always so, even in my term. Selamat pagi, Pak Condro. Terima kasih atas datang. So it's really nice to see that the 3 palaces are working together to keep the culture alive. So this can we have the next slide, please? This gong renteng music, this is a great group, is in my opinion probably the oldest, or possibly the second oldest form of music in the region. I mentioned briefly I lived with Pak Noh in 1976, and he said this is the ancient original form of gamelan in West Java. It's in the Sundanese areas as well as the Cirebonese areas. And I was lucky enough to study it in 1978 and 81. I played it briefly in 88, and then, like I said, I didn't go back for 17 years. And I came back and it was dead. It was dead. The instruments were around. The players had died. They never wrote it down. Hardly anybody recorded it or didn't have any. They'd have one player in a village, and he'd given up because there's nobody that wanted to learn it. And it was really sad. So I got a text from Mama Ian in 2014. Oh, Kang Agung, terima kasih, Kang. That they'd found some instruments buried in the ground. That the village head, it's a pretty interesting story. He was walking along at sunset and his foot kicked something and it went bonk. He thought, that's weird. He went back and uncovered it with his hands and it was a bonang pot. So he got some friends out and they dug it up and there was like 28 plus 5, what is that? 33 bonang pots and some sarankees and some gongs. So they dug them all up. And so they had a cleansing ceremony. Who knows why they were buried? It could have been politics. You know, things went on in the 60s. People didn't want to be associated with arts. That's just a guess. I don't know why it was buried, but it was buried. And it was dug up and they cleaned it off. And I had all these recordings and stuff. And so they learned all this repertoire through Elang Ingo and Mama Ian. And
you taught a few people and then they taught more people.
Yeah,
right?
And these guys just now they know all kinds of stuff that I never learned. And look, they're young people. Here they are recording at another Kraton Kasepuan, and they've got their nice Kraton clothes on. And it's lively music. It's fun music.
Really fun.
It's of the 5 types. It's possibly the funnest to play. Shouldn't say that. Next slide, please. Let's see what we got. Oh, this is the same group in a less formal setting. I don't know. Is there one more? Yeah, one more. And that same group also has you can see there's women in the group and men mixed, in case you think this is just a guy's world only in Gongrenting. Next slide, please. And they even have all women groups with evidently babies.
We're learning. She's learning.
Yeah, that's how they learn. They learn by immersion. It's maybe much like Bali. They don't explain anything. They just start to finish. They don't break it down. And so let's listen to, let's watch a little video of that, okay? You can see that Gongrenting is extremely lively. That sort of extemporaneous. Can you all hear me, by the way? I no longer see anybody.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Sorry
great.
about that. Thank you, Bat. That kind of music is very lively, not only rhythmically and crashing cymbals, but with a sengat, which is rhythmic chanting. You know, in Central Java, when I learned Central Javanese music, they also have sengat, but it's kind of planned. You know, everybody kind of does it at the same time. But in Cirebon, it's really just wildly free whenever the spirit moves you. So let's go on to the next kind of music. We're going to talk about dengung. So if you've probably heard of Sundanese dengung music, very popular even in Bali. They have their own form now, dengung Bali. But at its root, in its history, again, according to Patanoh, it was the ancient court music from the Pajajaran kingdom, the Sundanese kingdom in West Java, and it's a refined form of Gongrenting. So the lower bonangs were hung up as soft gongs, and it was slow and calm and no crashing cymbals like Gongrenting. When Pajajaran, the Hindu kingdom, was conquered by the Sultanate of Banten by the way, Banten was also founded by Gunung Jati, just like Cirebon was, around 1579, we think. The Gung from Pajajaran was removed to the new Kraton in Banten. And then later, that set was given as a wedding gift to Cirebon when there was intermarriage between Cirebon and Banten in the 1500s. And that old set is still on display. A second set was given to my teacher's palace, Kraton Cirebon, around 1800. And that's the only active ensemble now. And that's the one you see in the picture there. If you're used to Sundanese, the gung, first thing you'll notice the Cirebonese one is there's no flute and there's no drum. So the suling and the kendang were probably added to Sundanese the gung maybe around the 1920s. Some people say 1890, some people say 1921, but sometime around there. But the older form without flute and drum has been maintained in Cirebon. So the instruments look the same. Let's have another picture, shall we please? This is the set from the 1500s that was the gift. See, you can see it says Dari Banten on the little label there. It's in the old museum at Kraton Kasapuan. They sure sound different. They look the same, but sound different. Next picture, please. And this is the Kacirebonan set. So what I'd like to do is just play a very brief video of Sundanese Dugung, the classic form that you're probably familiar with. And then right after that, play the Cirebon Dengung from Kraton Kacirebonan for contrast. So go ahead. you can see, there is a marked contrast between the more well-known Sundanese Dengung and the ceremonial Cirebonese Dengung. It's considered a sacred music. It's a ceremonial music. It's only in the Keraton. So we're very lucky to have it. It's actually my honor to introduce the leader of the ensemble that you just saw, the sacred Dengung of Keraton Cirebon, Mama Elang Ian Arifuddin, or longtime friends. He's the son of he's the leader of the ensemble. He's also a wood carver, glass painter, Tayuban dancer. He's also chief of the Purbakala sort of antiquities at Keraton Cirebon. He's a performing shadow puppeteer, and he's even the head of the Cirebon Dalang organization. So we're very honored to have him. Welcome, Elang Ian. Apa kabar, Matt?
Matt, if you could turn on
Unmute.
Elang.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
Elang, okay, it's all set.
Thank you.
So he's going to say a little bit about it. He's not so confident with his English, so he's going to say some things, and I'll do my best to translate. But I want to ask more experienced Indonesian speakers, maybe Pak Sumarsam or Pak Arjito, if I'm translating incorrectly, please help me. Thank you. Amiyan, terima kasih. Monggo. Gimana? Bisa dengar, Ma? Coba unmute.
He's not muted in the Zoom program. He's not muted, but something on his side, the microphone or something.
Maybe he needs to join his audio.
Ya, belum bisa dengar, Mama Ian. I see that Edmundo was able to identify that renting piece as Balai Bandung. Yeah, that's the classic piece. You always start and end gong renting performance with Balai Bandung. Yeah, that's right. Well,
maybe he can exit Zoom and try to rejoin.
Okay. Gee,
How would you ask him to?
mohon maaf. Mau coba masuk lagi, Ma? Nggak bisa dengar. We might have to move on, and I'm very sorry
If
about
he
this.
joins again, he can always add in.
Lagi dicoba, Mak.
So, baik.
Selamat pagi.
Oh, pagi, Mama Ian.
Selamat pagi, Mimi and Mama Erik juga yang hadir di sini dalam Zoom meeting. Perkenalkan nama saya Elang Ian Arifuddin sebagai
Introducing himself.
Sebagai Kepala Unit Purbakala di Keraton Cirebon.
Head of Antiquities for the Cirebon Palace.
Ya, dalam kesempatan kali ini saya akan memberikan satu latar belakang dari Gamelan Dengung Keraton Cirebon.
You'd like to talk a little bit about the historical background of the Dengung at Cirebon Palace.
Gamelan Dengung adalah salah satu dari 5 instrumen gamelan yang menjadi syarat syiar untuk agama Islam di Pulau Jawa.
This is one of the 5 forms of gamelan that used to spread the Islamic religion on the island of Java.
Dengung, synonym is Mandeng Sing Kang Agung.
This is a sort of like gerata basa, ya, Pak?
Yep, betul.
Yeah, so it's the origin of the word. Apalagi, what was it again? Sekali lagi.
Mandeng Sing Kang Agung. Artinya kita menghargai, menyembah hanya Allah yang satu, yang Maha Besar.
Contained within the word Dengung, he said, is the Javanese for relying upon God alone.
Fungsi gamelan Dengung dulu untuk mendatangkan hujan.
Informally, it was used to bring rain in times of drought.
Karena masyarakat Cirebon pada waktu itu adalah petani atau agraris. Apabila kemarau panjang, maka berbondong-bondong para petani untuk mendatangi Sultan memohon agar membunyikan gamelan Dengung.
So the Cirebonese were mostly farmers, rice farmers, an agrarian society, and in times of no rain and for an extended dry period, the farmers would come to the keraton and ask the sultan to bring out the dengung to bring rain.
Ya, tentunya itu atas izin Allah Subhanahu wa taala, dan sebelum melakukan pagelaran gamelan dengung kami berdoa bersama untuk memohon agar hujan turun.
So I think he's trying to make the point here that they're not really saying that the gamelan does it as such, but it's with God's permission, and they would pray together first, and then they would bring out the dengung and play.
Keberadaan gamelan dengung di Keraton Cirebon itu berawal dari pernikahan salah satu menak priangan yang bernama Adipati Raden Salmon Salam.
So he's saying the dengung came to his palace of a marriage with a prince or orang menak, like a noble from the Sundanese area.
Beliau adalah salah satu bupati Cirebon yang ke-7 dan ya memerintah pada waktu itu di tahun 1902 sampai dengan 1918.
So he was the 7th Bupati of Cirebon, and he was 1902 to, what was that, 1919, I think he said? Yes.
Ya, itu adalah salah satu mas kawin atau sedang penglamar dari beliau untuk putri dari salah satu pada waktu itu era Sultan Raja Madenda ketiga.
So it was a wedding gift for, I think, Putri Sultan Yama.
Betul?
One of the daughters, one of the princesses from the palace, this Bupati was going to marry, so he gave that as mas kawin, as sort of like bridal money.
Yes. Dan diperkirakan kurang lebih gamelan dengung Keraton Cirebon dibuat pada abad ke-17.
It was made maybe in the 17th century, approximately.
Alhamdulillah kami masih merawat minimal 1 tahun sekali kami bunyikan. Namun sebelum kami bunyikan, siap tanggal 1 Syura atau 1 Muharram, kami bersihkan, kami cuci, dan sore setelah sholat asar kami bunyikan.
He said at least they play it once a year on Javanese New Year's, and they take it out and they ritually wash it, and they play it from the afternoon until the evening.
Hanya ada beberapa lagu di gamelan dengung Keraton Cirebon. Yang pertama ada lagu Dendawi Guna, ada lagu Kinceng Bang, ada lagu dengung itu sendiri, ada lagu Wa Bango, dan Kacongan. Kurang lebih ada 8, yang 3 masih kami pelajari. Mungkin itu.
So he said there's a limited repertoire of approximately 8 pieces. Mohon maaf, agak ini waktunya sudah.
Oh ya, terima kasih banyak.
Mohon maaf
ya.
Terima kasih banyak atas kontribusinya, Mak. So it's a very limited repertoire, and you can tell by what Mama Ian is saying, it's very sacred to the people. It's not entertainment music. And so it's a very special music. And Mama Ian, Elang Ian is the director of the dengung at Keraton Cirebon. Matur kesuwun sangat, Mak. So that's two of the 3 ancient forms that we're going to talk about, gong renteng and dengung. And the third is gong sekate. So I think we've got a picture of that. There it is. So you're probably maybe familiar with a glorious gamelan sekaten that you see in Keraton Jogja and Keraton Solo, but you might not know that there were also sekaten gamelans in the old Keraton Semenep in the island of Madura, which is now lost. And there was a sekaten at Keraton Banten in the far west of Java. But the Dutch blew up the palace in the 1800s and took the sekaten away. And now you can see it in the Museum Indonesia in Jakarta. So
That might be the next picture.
yeah, can you go ahead and show another picture, please? So it's very old set. It has a much more ancient, that's fine, much more ancient look and feel. And these instruments that you see were a wedding gift from the kingdom of Demak to the kingdom of Cirebon in 1522. But they had been previously removed by the head of Demak from Kraton Majapahit around 1478. This is in court documents. So very old instruments, and they're still there. When the Cirebon Sultanate divided in 1678 into Keraton Kasepuhan and Keraton Kanoman, the instruments were divided, and then new instruments were added to fill it out. So we're going to hear the Keraton Kasepuhan version first. If you could play the video, please. So you can just see and hear how ancient those instruments are. And I didn't realize there was such a long prayer section in there. Sorry, but it does show the sacredness of the instruments. There should be ritually clean before they play them. They pray before there's clouds of incense burning. So this tradition goes way back. The gentleman in the picture there playing the lead instrument, it's called pengaratik, which is a form of bonang. Is a very important teacher and artist in Cirebon, and we actually have him attending today. It's my honor to introduce that he's the leader of the sacred Gong Sakati in Keraton Kasepuhan, Mama Guru Wariosela. He's a gamelan teacher. He's an amazing gambang player. He's a mask carver. He's a glass painter. He's a topeng dancer. He's a researcher. He's an author, right, numerous articles, and also a performing shadow puppeteer. And he's the director of the Gong Sakati at Keraton Kasepuhan. I'd like to welcome now Mama Guru Wariosela. Terima kasih. Welcome, Mama Wario. Perhaps you'd like to say something about Gong Sekati?
Oh, he has to unmute.
Kita masih belum bisa dengar Mama Mario. Masih di mute.
Oh ya, sudah.
Oke. Monggo, Ma.
Ya, sudah bisa ini Pak ya. Ya, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Teman-teman semua, alhamdulillah pada hari ini bisa ketemu, Ma. Saya sebagai bertugas di Keraton Kasepuhan sejak 98, bertugas sebagai Lurah Gamelan Gong Sekati semenjak Bapak Raden Salam wafat, kemudian dilanjutkan oleh Mama Solihin, kemudian setelah beliau sudah tidak bisa memimpin, kemudian kami melanjutkan atas dasar perintah dari
Bentar Pak, boleh saya
Sultan
terjemahkan? Karena agak panjang, saya tidak hafal semua.
Ya.
Ini pakai bahasa Inggris.
Baik, bahasa terbatas. Oke. Ya.
Barangkali Mama Mario mau bicara dalam bahasa Inggris.
Saya ditugaskan menabung sekali sejak tahun 98.
Yeah, so he's been the leader of the Gong Sekati, which is what you call Gamelan Sekati in Cirebon, Gong Sekati, since 1998. He mentioned the person that he learned it from.
Itu atas perintah Sultan Maulana Patingra, Sultan ke-13, semenjak Raden Salam wafat.
So he was ordered to direct the music by the Sultan Kasepuhan 2 sultans ago. Yes. Monggo. Silakan, Ma.
Nah, keberadaan gamelan Gong Sekati ini secara historis hadir di Cirebon ketika masuk museum ini memang sudah cukup lama, sekitar abad 14 sudah ada di museum. Kemudian lagu-lagu yang ada di dalam Gong Sekati ini terdiri hanya 3, yaitu Bango Butak, kemudian Sekaten, dan Rambon atau Rambu.
So he was saying
biasanya,
oh, sorry. Yeah, it's been in the museum for since the 1400s, and there is a repertoire of 3 sacred pieces, Bango Butak, Lagu Sekaten, dan Rambon.
Nah, biasanya ini dimainkan oleh jumlah nayaga dari jumlah yang ada yaitu 7 orang, diselenggarakan di bangsal Karesmen, Komplek Siti Inggil, Keraton Kasepuhan Cirebon.
So Javanese palaces have a raised area with the pavilions on it called Siti Inggil, or in Cirebonese Lemah Dur. I think the Keratons in Central Java also have Siti Inggil. And so there's a special pavilion just devoted to this kind of gamelan. That's all it's used for. Gending Keresmen, Bale Keresmen, Bale? Mande Keresmen.
Mande Keresmen. Ya,
Dan ada berapa nayaga, berapa Ma?
7 orang.
Yeah, it has 7 musicians.
Ya.
And in the picture,
Di dalam penyelenggarannya, ya di dalam pementasannya, tradisi menabuh Gong Sekati ini biasanya adalah ditabuh pada saat hari besar agama Islam, yaitu ketika perayaan Idul Fitri dan perayaan Idul Adha.
So it's used to celebrate in Keraton Kasepuhan 2 Islamic holidays. One is the end of the fasting month, and the other is the end of the pilgrimage month.
Ya, ada yang pernah sejak dari jam ini, dulu memang seperti yang disebutkan oleh Mama Mary, sejak gamelan ini berasal dari Mak, kemudian berasal dari kerajaan Majapahit juga, bahkan untuk bagaimana tradisi leluhur Majapahit menggarakan di hari besar menggunakan video gamelan ini.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear much of that. It was kind of broken up, but I think he said it goes back to the Majapahit era where it was used for parties and celebrations. Pesta. Yes.
Ya. Lanjut dengan ini pakai gamelan yang agak pusaka yang paling tua antara gamelan lain keraton Sepuhan Bon.
Mohon maaf Pak, susah dengar. Sinyalnya mungkin.
Jadi gamelan ini adalah gamelan tua di musik keraton ya. Jadi
maybe the oldest. Yeah. Oh, terima kasih. Yeah, so he's very courteous here, but he's saying the instruments are so very old, going back to the 1400s, that there's actually a hope to make a duplicate of it and keep these in the museum because they're extremely old, but they're considered to be powerful objects, you know, in their own merit. Mungkin ya, terima kasih banyak, Mama Mario.
Terima kasih Mas. Ya, makasih. Ya,
okay, thank you, Matt. So there are two palaces that now have this kind of music, and over the years since the kratons divided in 1678, they've each kind of developed their own style and repertoire. So we heard the Kraton Kasepuhan one led by Mama Wario. Thanks again, Mama Wario, for addressing us here today. He's a very busy school teacher. He teaches gamelan in the schools. He took time out for this. The other kraton that has skaten, Kraton Kanaman, plays once a year, but instead of, Kasepuhan does it twice a year for like 40 minutes, Kanaman does it once a year for 4 days, day and night, practically nonstop. And it has a very different repertoire and feeling. It's a very magical and dreamlike quality. Could you show the next slide, please? So you can see it has more sarons, but they're smaller. Next slide, please. And it has this lamp always there. And this lamp is, the oil in the lamp is considered to be imbued with magical quality from the instruments. And the man facing right in front of the lamp there at the Bonang is Kang Ato. He's the director of the Gong Sagati in Kraton Kanaman. And it plays day and night. It's just magical, but it's very delicate. It's very soft. And the late Sultan of Kraton Kanaman told me in the 1980s, he said, well, in Jogja and Solo, their Sakatin is magnificent and it's brilliant and it's strong. He said, my Sakatin it's cilik pisan, it's tiny, and I think you'll hear how delicate and soft it is. Ian, could you play the video of this, please? Hope you enjoy it.
Okay.
So you can see what a different atmosphere it is, how kind of dreamlike, but what an explosive beginning. First, they're all praying, and then they're all waiting. Well, they're waiting for the right time to start. And I love that clock. They've got that clock that plays that little nursery rhyme, and that's how they know it's time. And once it plays that little nursery rhyme, boy, pandemonium. You probably saw it. They're throwing coins. They're throwing coins at the musicians, which gets blessing back for the participants, including the Sultan, who was right in front. They're throwing coins right there, and the poor musicians are hunched over, so trying to play bonang and saron and whatever. So it's a wonderful mix of sacred and raucous, which is sort of very typical of Cirebon. So that's the Kraton Kanaman version of Gong Sakati, played once a year. Moving on now to the fourth kind of gamelan, and that is Gamelan Pelok. So this is a group. Where are they? Out in Plumbon? Weru. They're out in Weru, Kotawali. This is a group. Again, you see all these young people who really picked up learning the music. I don't know about other regions, but there are women drummers in Cirebon, as you can see here. Can you turn it, please? Next slide. Well, there's another woman drummer. Yeah, that's a local group. You can see that Cirebon Kendang looks a little bit like a Balinese drum. It's very straight sides, kind of conical. It's not egg-shaped like Sundis and Central Javanese drum. Next, please. This is Mama Mario's old group, Alawang Sinlang Dati. Yama, this is an old Sandung Alawang Dati. So there's boys and girls and young people and old people. The one closest to us with her back, she's got a Topeng costume on, so musicians are dancers. There's this sort of lively, free interplay. Speaking of Topeng, I should mention that we have in attendance today a very famous Guru Topeng Cirebon, Mas Inu Arsaputra is here today. Is from a famous lineage of Topeng dancers, and we'll show a little bit of the Topeng a little bit later. Terima kasih, Mas Ibnu. So what's the next slide, please? Oh, so what are we going to hear first? Yeah, so let's, the Pelo Gamelan is often played for wayang golek, or sometimes known as wayang golek papak, the Cirebon style of wayang golek. This is another noble character. Oh, thank you, Irene. And next, please. This is the same gentleman you saw carving a mask earlier, Ki Warsat. He's known more than as a carver, as a performing wayang golek puppeteer. So that is the primary clown that he's holding in his left hand, called Lam Sijan. Lam Sijan is the Cirebonese golek clown, and then it looks like a princess character. Let's see, next, please. So he's the head of a group that we mentioned before called Jaka Baru in Indramayu, and they use gamelan pelok for accompaniment. And let's hear a little bit now. So.
Minangka barang warisan sing para wali, warisan si nenek moyang, setahun di bakal hilang. Saking kula separakan cek, serombongan wayang golek Jaka Baru, Jaka Baru. Mama Warsat pimpinane alamati saking desa Gadingan, kecamatan saking Surya, kabupaten saking Indramayu, sedaya saminyak siri.
So you heard a little bit of Gamelan Pelog, Cirebon style. The instruments are similar to Central Java, but there are fewer of them, and they're physically smaller. Notation is almost never used. Actually, Felicia has a notation story, I think.
Notation story. Oh, so when Richard went to Indonesia, back to Cirebon in 2005, he brought pictures of us playing gamelan here in the United States, in California, and then Elang Tomi, right? He said, "Why is everybody frowning at their laps?" And we said, well, we have notebooks and we have our notation in the notebooks, and they're down low so that people don't look at the notebooks, they can see the instruments. And he said, no, you should be looking forward and up and out when you're performing. You're looking at the audience and you're looking at your instrument and you're watching the dancer, the Topeng dancer, or you're watching the wayang and you're playing. And so we stopped using notation many years ago, never used it for gong renteng, learned all of those pieces by heart. And then eventually we started learning everything by heart. So we practice without notation. We use it a little bit to look at the Sekatan songs, because since we only play them 3 times a year, and just to remind ourselves. But we learn Cirebonese style, which is that you listen and you follow, and you listen and you follow, and you get, since the music is cyclic, you get better and better all the time at getting the notes correct.
Yeah, thank you. It's true. You might have noticed in the music it sound a little bit different. Partly it's not just because the instruments are smaller and less, but there's additional instruments that you might not have so much in Central Java. The kecrek, which is like a little metal plate, check. Kemanak, which you might know from the sacred dances in Solo, like Bedaya Kotawali, they play with kemanak. But instead of having one person each holding a kemanak, in Cirebon, one person holds 2 and they strike them against each other. And they're an important part of the Cirebon gamelan sound.
And they're smaller.
Yeah. That's very important. And they have a transverse flute in Pelog instead of the vertical flute called bangsing. Something similar to what would be a demung is thinner keys with a deep trough resonator played with like a slentum tabu, and it's this deep, warm, soft sound called panerus, not like the bonang panerus in Central Java. It's like a bass saron. So that's a real part of the Cirebon sound. And most importantly is the kubluk, a 2-pot timekeeping instrument. Like a lot of the instruments, the name describes the sound ding, bluk, ding, ding, bluk, ding. You may have heard it in the video. So between the kubluk and the bangsing and the panerus, that's really kind of the soul of Cirebon gamelan. So Pelog gamelan, in addition to Wang Cepak, if you could show the next slide, please, is also used for sacred court dances, especially female dances. This is one of the gateways from Katong Kanaman. Previously, we had seen the gateway from Katong Kesepuhan, and that's a beringin tree, which all Javanese palaces has, a banyan tree behind it. Next picture, please. And they use the Gamelan Pelog for a sacred dance called Bedaya Rimbe. And this is only performed maybe once every few years. I know it wasn't played from 1969 to like 1990. But it's been recently played again. The music is calm and elegant, and we'll just listen to a few moments, if you can put the link in the chat box, of the Pelog music for the sacred Kraton Kanaman dance. This is Bedaya Rimbe. We've already listened to 4 of the 5 types of gamelan from Cirebon, the 3 ancient types, gong renteng, dengu, and gong sekati. And this has been gamelan pelog, which we showed accompanying the wayang golek, and also the sacred court dance from Katung Kanaman. And now the final piece that I want to talk, the type I want to talk about is gamelan prawa. Prawa is the Javanese version of slendro. It's their name for gamelan slendro. And it's famous in Cirebon for accompanying the Topeng mass dances, and also the wayang purwa, shadow puppet theater. They call it wayang purwa in Cirebon. And I just want to thank again the Mahaguru Topeng Cirebon Mas Inu. Yes, I think is in attendance here. This music goes back hundreds of years. The one being shown in the picture is Klana, is one of possibly the most famous. It's the last in the series of 5. Felicia had a chance to study it. It's an amazing thing to see. The gamelan is kind of loud and wild compared to the more soft and gentle music for the wayang kulit. And it's thought to be an early form of gamelan prawa. So can you show one more picture, please, Ian? The older dancers are really highly respected. This is the late Mimi Rasina from Indramayu area. And she danced practically until her dying day a few years ago. So it's not just a young person's thing. It could be men and women, but certainly the older dancers are really more respected. So this is going to be our last video now, but before I play it, I just want to mention it was labeled. You could see Mimi Rasina, and portion of that video. I selected it because it showed a lot of different dances, little bits and pieces. You got a feeling of it. But she may have been elderly, but she was strong and lontat. She was bouncy and energetic, and just what a phenomenal dancer, Mimi Rasina. The last example I like to play of Cirebon Gamelan is also Gamelan Prawa, their version of Slendro. This is the music for the Wayang Purwa Shadow Puppet Theater. Could you show a picture of that, please, Ian? Again, women are very important in that, especially as sarong players. And the next slide, please. And as gender players, although gender has become extremely rare in Cirebon. It's on the verge of extinction, actually. The Cirebon gender is very tall compared to Central Javanese, and it only has 10 keys, much like Bali in both those regards. But the music is very elegant for the Shadow Puppet Theater. It's not nearly as lively and as much cymbals and stuff as the Topeng. And especially complex and lovely are the pieces for Tatalu, or the overture. And my first gamelan teacher, Pachokro, was very enamored of the Cirebonese Tatalu, especially pieces like Kaboran and Merangdawa. He was very interested in those. So if you could...
Saking Gusti Allah, mugi kula sedaya angsal ridho barokah saking Gusti kang atus keluarga angsal ridho barokah saking Gusti Allah, waras mulia. Barokah kula sedaya.
That's Wayang Purwa, and after I was telling you how elegant and calm it is, Felicia reminded me, that's a pretty lively rendition. And it sure is. Yeah, sometimes it's calm and sometimes it isn't. But those are basically, it's an introduction to the 5 styles of Gamelan Cirebon. But I decided to add one more thing. It's not technically gamelan, but it's a gamelan-inspired music that became popular in Cirebon called tarling. You may have heard of this. Tarling is guitar, and suling. Batondo is mentioning that Mimi Rasina is our legend. She was just a legendary dancer. So true, Pa. Tarling is guitar, and suling, technically the suling miring or bangsing, the transverse flute. And traditional gamelan pieces are transferred onto two guitars. And individual, oh, there's a good picture, individual instrumental parts of saron and even gambang and panerus and kanong and even gong are played on the two guitars. You can see there's two guitars on either side, and there's the suling, the flute in front. And sometimes they'll have a set of kendang drums, as you see there. Looks like Sundanese drums in this case. And sometimes you'll have a katrek and a gong. Can you have the next slide, please? But more typically, it's just two guitars and a flute. And here in the center, you see a legendary tarling player, Mamajana Partanain, who is an elder statesman of tarling. He's been playing since the 1940s. And that's his grandson, Mas Arif, on the other guitar. And I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the flute player. But the music is dreamlike and calm. And truth be told, I'm a gamelan guy, but tarling is the music I love to listen to from Cirebon. And let's just listen for a bit. This is our last video of tonight. This is tarling classic from Cirebon. tiling, even though it's got guitar, in some ways it's more conservative than the current treatment of gamelan instruments. The piece you heard is a Javanese gamelan piece that's Dipangwalik, played in the pelok scale. And I don't know about you guys, but I just think it's the most lovely stuff anyway. So that's kind of it. That's our introduction to Gamelan of Cirebon today. I want to thank you all for your attention. I'm sorry we ran a few minutes over here, but that's also a little bit normal, I think, with Indonesian affairs. I apologize again for any errors on my part or any omissions. A special thanks, terima kasih banyak Mama Elang Ian dan Mama Guru Wariosela dan juga Guru Topeng Mas Inu, and also especially to Matt and to Ian Martin for all the technical aspects. And also we had 3 visitors from the Politeknik Prima Internacional that took time from their busy schedule to watch this. Thank you, Pak Chondro dan Pak Bambang dan juga Mas Agung. Terima kasih banyak. So I know it's running a little late, but if anybody wants to talk about anything or ask any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them if I can.
Great. Why don't we stop the screen share then?
Great, thanks. And maybe we could just do it verbally because I'm having a little trouble with the chat box.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's, if anybody has any questions, let's queue up in the chat box, and we can ask some questions. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in first.
I can't do everything, but I'll do my best here.
I have a quick question for you, Richard. Your gamelan group here in the United States, Gamelan Sinar Surya.
That's right.
Where did you get the name from that, for that group?
Well, it's a classic Javanese image. The rays of the sun, Sinar is the rays, Surya is the old word for the sun. And I just moved from 10 years in rather cloudy Seattle to Southern California, where I was born. I'm 5th generation Southern Californian. So that was a good part of it. But the Surya image is prominent also in Cirebonese art.
Absolutely. And you have some CDs, right?
That's right. Yeah. So thanks to Ian, we put together 4 CDs of all 5 genres, and the audience for them in America is very small. I really made them primarily for Indonesia, and I distribute them there. And they're, great compliment to us. They're used in palaces and museums and restaurants, and also for studying material, because some of these are old pieces that I learned in the 70s. So they're sort of studying material.
I think in the last few years, what we've mostly been doing is finding out from Cirebonese artists songs that they have the name of, but they don't know the material. And so we've been recording ancient songs that Richard had learned when he was younger, and then putting them on the CDs and getting them back to their original owners. That's one of our main goals.
Super cool. Pak Sumar-sam has a question.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me good? Okay.
Jelas.
Okay. Mama Richard, I'm learning a lot about Cirebon from you. I'm just doing my best only a few times going there to, and I would like to say hello to Kang Waryo, who always show me around when I'm visiting Cirebon. My question is, you number of times you mentioned about this connection of Mojopahit, Bali, Demak, and Cirebon. Bali, in particular, the Gapuran, the gate of Kanoman and Kaspuan and things. Is there any evidence of musical connections between these centers at that time, Mojopahit, Bali, Demak, and Cirebon? I am very much interested in Gamelan Sekati because it's very interesting in both people in Cirebon and people in Solo, Jogja, always believe that Sekati is being created by Kalijogo, Sunan Kalijogo, or Wali in general. But why they are so different, right? I mean, between Solo, Jogja, and Cirebon. So I would like to know if there's any things about Bali, though, whether there's any connection of musical connection between Cirebon and Bali.
Thank you, Pak. I'll try to answer that question. I'm really not a historian. I'm mostly just a Nayaga Biasa, but I'm starting to write a paper about interesting similarities, specific similarities between Cirebon and Bali. You mentioned the split gates in the Keraton. Right. There's the kendang design. There's the gender design. There's the bell tree. There's the prominence of catreks. There's the prominence of interlocking. There's things that I'm forgetting right now. Right. There are so many similarities in architecture, even linguistically, I've heard. I'm not a linguist. We could talk to Ed about this. And so my usual answer for this, Bali and Cirebon are so far away. They're very similar. I don't think anything from Bali in Bali came from Cirebon. I don't think anything in Cirebon came from Bali. I think they both received a lot from Jawa Timur. They both received a lot of people migrating from East Java along the north coast to the west and the very short distance to Bali. So that's why I think there is such a similarity. In terms of direct Majapahit influence on Cirebon itself, I can speak more to that. The architecture, yes. We even know the name of the architect who came from Majapahit. The music that they feel they received from Majapahit is actually Gong Sekati. The Demak only had it briefly. They took it from the Keraton, Majapahit, and then it was given as a wedding gift to Cirebon. So whereas the Dengung and the Gong Renteng were from Pajajaran, the old Hindu kingdom in the west. But other than that, I don't know anybody who knows anything about what Demak gamelan is, unless you want to talk about Gamelan Senin, maybe.
Right. That's the question. It's really very interesting. Let me just say, as soon as I learned about Cirebon, it's really Cirebon is an older tradition than Solo and Jogja. Just let me tell you just briefly about my finding just this afternoon, actually. See, when I listened to Gamelan Sekati and Kasepuan, and then at a certain point, Mark Perman asked me about Gamelan Sekati in Jogja and Solo. As I think probably you were present at the time. And Bapak Danker, who actually let us listen to some of the many Balinese gamelan in his collections, but now we cannot listen to it anymore. I think he took out the link. But I actually listened once with this Gamelan Sekati in Temaga in Bali, and I just transcribing this afternoon. It's stylistically just like Cirebon, and also the phrasing is also end on certain note exactly like the Cirebon. At least one piece. It was very exciting for me to discover this. Particularly, thank you to Matt, who organize this, and this encounter is always give you something to think about.
Yes, this is new information for me, Pas Marsam, and I'm really grateful for you bringing it up. And I wonder if somehow we could share this a little bit. And also, I'm just so honored that you would attend. You're a famous gamelan guru and a famous author, and I'm just a guy who just does this in my spare time. So saya malu di depan guru besar seperti Pak Marsam.
And also, can you give me that reference that you mentioned about that gamelan from Mojopahit to Demak and to Cirebon?
Pak Wario has it.
Okay, I will ask him.
Yeah, he's the one who gave it to me.
All
yes,
right, thank you.
Okay, we have some questions from Vaughn in Bali.
Hi, Vaughn.
Comments.
Hi everyone, selamat pagi. Om Swastiastu from Bali.
Hey.
Can everyone hear me clearly?
Very clearly, thank you, Vaughn.
First of all, I'd like to say thanks so much, Richard, for your presentation. It's been really interesting, and with all the historical background, I've learned a lot, and I'm sure all the other listeners have too. I also want to say selamat pagi to all your guru, mahaguru in Cirebon. Sorry, I don't know them personally. I've just said hi to them in the chat box, so hopefully you can make some connections there. And selamat malam, Pak Sumarsam. It's really interesting because his comment was one of the many comments that I wanted to make with the Gamelan Sekati connection in Bali. Now, I don't know if any of you know, but I would say that 99% of Balinese people, including Balinese musicians and even professors, don't know about Gamelan Sekati in Bali. And it's considered just to be a plain style that's played on gong kebiar, mostly in North Bali, and then a few sanggar play that as well. And a lot of musicians I've talked to, prominent musicians in Bali, have never heard of the actual gamelan. In fact, I debated with them that it actually existed because the first time I found examples of it were in old photos from I think 1875 in North Bali. And since then, like Pak Sumarsam said that Pak Dankar Sharaman, he shared a Sekati recording through YouTube that was made by Teo Meyer in 1962 in Temego, which is in Karangasem. And that gamelan still exists. And since then, I've found 2 or 3 other Sekati gamelan that are not referred to as Sekati gamelan, but they are Sekati gamelan. And so the names of them, or the one that I've just found recently in Padawa in Buleleng, it has the name of the gamelan set is called Gamelan Usabo, which is just the name of the ceremony that it accompanies, and they don't actually know the name of the gamelan set. And then the similarities between that one and the one in Karangasem are so close. So I could share some. I found some video, and I've connected with the musicians there, and they practice on an instrument that's similar to slonding, but it's a wooden keyed instrument played with big clubs, sort of like slonding, but it's a slonding kayu. And as you know, I'm really interested in trying to help Balinese reconstruct ancient instruments and also reconstruct the lost repertoire, and Sekati is one of those. I'm not sure, I haven't found out yet because of the pandemic. I'm not going out and doing research. But I've heard from friends in Karangasem that the one in Temego still exists. And I don't know what state of repair it's in, but Danka said that it was in really bad shape in 1989 or something. Now, the difference between the Sekati in Temego is that it used to have a bamboo instrument in it, like gong luang, or like, what's it called? Saron Charot in Bali. So it's a very rare type of gamelan. And there are a few other things I wanted to comment on because I think it's really interesting what you're saying about that possibly this music and then instruments and traditions came across from East Java to North Java, to Cirebon, and then maybe went across to Bali. But I see so many other connections that really freak me out. For example, with the tuning, because I'm really into tuning, the tuning, make instruments and that. the tuning heights are much higher in Cirebon compared with Central Java. They're much, much closer to Balinese tuning heights. And I've just noticed connections in the tuning from what I can hear with my ears, which are probably not as well attuned as Balinese ears, but I can hear that now which one was it? I think it was the Dengung, maybe. Can't remember offhand now. But it sounds very similar to the tuning of Gong Chinet, the small gamelan in North Bali, 5-tone gamelan. And then other connections I saw in the tradition was with the oil and the lamp that's used in Slonding in a number of villages, in Asak, Bungaya, a number of villages in perhaps in Tenganan as well. With their Slonding traditions, the lamp signifies the start of the Slonding performances during the ceremony, and then the end of it at the end of, if it's played for a week or a month or something like that. Just a few other, I just have some, wait a second, I was just going to say about the, that I noticed that there are instruments which are similar to lost instruments in Bali, like there's that one which is sort of a row of saron keys. It looks like a gambang gongso. I just want to ask you if that is nailed on both sides, like, because the gambang gongso is hung on one end, isn't it? I'm not sure, but in Bali it's hung on one end and nailed on one end, and that's extinct in Bali. We've reconstructed one here, but we haven't used it because of the pandemic. And another interesting thing I noticed is that the playing style, particularly of the gamelan, is it renteng? Correct me if I'm wrong, pronunciation, but there don't seem to be any louds and softs and no dynamics that I noticed. And that's very common with Gamelan Sakati in Bali and very common with Slonding in Bali. Don't connect with the Slonding Tenganan or the kids that play it in the modern style. In the very traditional style, there aren't really any louds or softs or dynamics.
The gong renteng is typically played with sticks that are not padded.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes
so we see that
we use padded ones because of cultural things, but yeah, in general, it's just a stick.
So I'm interested also in reconstructing mallets as well, and almost all of the older mallets in Bali have no paddings on them. And I've had young musicians saying to me, "Oh, we can't do it like that because it sounds awful." But when you actually have it in the context of a whole ensemble and you take the padding off, and you can actually hear the instrument clearer. So anyway, we're looking at that.
Another thing, if I could just interrupt briefly about the tabus before I forget it. The traditional tabu for all kinds of gamelan in Cirebon, all the hammered instruments, looks like a Balinese one. It's long and drawn out with a curve. It's not quite as slender as a Pangu Bali, but it's definitely that shape. It's long. Sometimes they just make whatever they have laying around, but that's the traditional shape. It's much like Bali. Yeah,
so this stuff is really really made me curious and really freaking me out. And from a long time, I've thought these things are very connected. Also, if you look at the masks between the ancient Legong Dadari, they're bitten and held in the teeth, Legong Dadari, and this, which is accompanied by the ancient Samara Pagulian and Kotawali here near where we are. And that they look very much like masks from Cirebon, although they go and perform in East Java rather than West Java when they perform every so often, every 5 years there. And the other connections that I saw with the 10 kids, Lendro, Cirebon Gender, Matt commented on that, and also that they have bamboo resonators, not, I think in Java they use mostly metal resonators. Unfortunately in Bali they mostly use PVC now. And then just another thing, sorry, I've just lots of comments, but it's really, really interesting. I see much more connection between West Java and Bali than Central Java and Bali. And my ongoing research of Samara Pagulian, I don't know when my book's going to come out because I keep finding out this new stuff and I keep adding it in. But the last 23 years, I've noticed much more connections between ancient Samara Pagulian and Bali. I'm not talking about Samara Pagulian that the kids from Isi or the kids in Sanggar in Bali play, but the really, really old Samara Pagulian that we see in Bali, most of it's lost, the playing styles. It's very, very similar, and the instruments are very similar to West Java. But when you have the the modern Semar Pulian here is just very, very similar to Gong Kebiar. So I think there are, when you were saying how with your notation and your recordings, it helped brought back old traditions. And I'm hoping that this knowledge that, I hope that there's a connection, but this sort of knowledge will also help us to generate some more pride in young Balinese to dig into these ancient traditions, not just in the music, but also the playing styles, the instrumentation, the way it's played, but also even just real details like the mallets and stuff like that. So thank you very much, because it's inspired me a lot this morning. People probably thought, why is Vaughan going to a lecture on West Javanese Cirebon music or North Javanese music? But this is something I really, really was looking forward to, because I just could keep seeing these connections, and Samara-san has picked up on them too, and he's even notated it. I'm not very good at notating anything, but that's really incredible, Samara-san, that you've notated and found that connection through the notation. I keep hearing it like that. And now it's, you know, there seems to be a connection. So maybe there's a theory that we can develop, or I don't know. But so I think those are most of my comments, and also the gulmanak and the beltry and those sorts of things. Although you find those in Java, but the small gulmanak in West, where you are in Cirebon, North Java, and the gulmanak is small in Bali,
This big.
like the ones I have behind here on the stands. And yeah, everything's smaller. You know, all the instrument sizes are smaller in Cirebon, similar to sizes of old instruments in Bali. I'm not talking about new instruments in Bali, which are all generally a lot bigger. But yeah, so I'm wondering if there's some sort of connection there.
Well, first of all, I'm just so impressed with, I'm following the work that you do, and so impressed with all that you've done, bringing back old traditions in Bali. So maybe you and I should just talk privately. Would you consider doing something together? We could do a joint paper or something about these connections and some of the historical connections between Bali and North Coast.
Yeah, definitely. We've probably got a lot more time at the moment.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, terima kasih banyak.
Sama-sama.
All right, Richard, you still got some time? You got a couple more questions.
Oh, sure. I'm amazed that people are staying around. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Andrew Timar has a question. You want to jump in? Andrew?
Richard.
Hi.
Hello. Wonderful.
There he is. Hey, handsome.
It's great to hear your depth of knowledge and experience in this music.
Still learning, man. Still learning.
Yeah. I think you probably might guess what I'm going to ask about. As a suling player, I'm particularly drawn to the bangsing. And you had some really good examples in the gamelan and the pilog and the toddling. Of course, in the toddling, it really plays it takes over from the singer, from the sindan. And yeah, we didn't hear the sindan, but we heard the toddling really blowing very intensely there. I'm curious, the transverse flute doesn't have a prominent role in the rest of Java. What is your thinking about that? I have my own theories, but I'd like to hear some of your ideas on where that comes from and why it's such a prominent role in, at least in those two genres.
Okay, so I don't know a lot, but the bangsing, or as it used to be called in the 70s, the suling miring, suling on an angle, is clearly and consciously derived from a Chinese flute. It has the 6-finger holes plus a membrane hole, like the pronounce it dietze. I don't know how I don't speak Chinese.
It is dietze.
Okay, something like that. So there is a very close connection between Cirebon and Chinese culture. Sunan Gunung Jati, the founder of the Sultanate, married the daughter of the emperor, the Ming emperor, and she's the one who brought the rocks and clouds iconic symbol over from China. It's very Chinese. There's Chinese aspects in the architecture. There's all kinds of Chinese influence. A lot of the wali were partly Chinese blood, we think. So all along the North Coast, being a trading area, is very connected with Chinese stuff. Having said that, when you go back to, I should say the Suling Miring or Bangsing is more associated with Pelog than with Gamelan Prawa or Slendro. It's considered mostly Pelog. But the older recordings that I heard from the 70s, it wasn't there yet. It was just the regular Suling for both scales. So something brought it in to be more popular in gamelan, and I think this is my personal theory with no evidence, so you can take this with mountains of salt, this influence from Tarling, that the Bangsing came into gamelan, and now you can't have gamelan pelog without it. But in the old photographs and the old recordings, you hear Bangsing and not regular Suling. You hear regular Suling and no Bangsing yet. So that's all I know about that. And
is it my imagination, or in the old photographs did we see both Suling and Rabab, for instance?
Absolutely right. As recently as the 1970s. The Rabab has died out, much to my sadness. In Cirebon, I've been talking to people about reviving it. The older people who knew about it said it's much closer to Central Javanese Rabab in style of playing and very different from Sundanese Rabab. It's not played as high and fast as Sundanese Rabab. It's softer, it's slower, it's calmer, and the instrument is smaller, like a Central Javanese Rabab. We have old photographs of it. We have Rabab stands, but nobody can really play it. Few people have brought Sundanese Rababs in and just played it like Sunda and just went to town on it. But the older players say that if you're looking for Cirebon Rabab, look more to Central Java than to Cirebon, or than to Sunda.
Thanks again, Richard, for your wonderful insights.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Couple more here.
Wow. Okay.
Pak Condro Prima wants to have a question.
He's the director of this wonderful institute for tourism and culture in Cirebon. So I'm very honored to have him attending.
And Mimi Felicia, I'm wondering after you bring the Cirebon culture to America, how far America people interesting and curious about the culture, and which part they are like it?
Pak, terus terang ya, I have to be honest with you. I don't feel like gamelan of any kind at this point, despite decades of it being here. It's not a big part of the culture, and it's unknown to most Americans. So if I say to somebody, I play Indonesian music, they have never heard the word gamelan. They don't know Bali, Jawa, Cirebon, Sunda, anything. So it's not really known outside of educational institutions and the followings of some groups. What was the second half of your question? Oh, what part do they like? But when we do play, they like things that are loud and fast. They like gongrenteng, and they like the music for the Topeng mass dancing because hidup rame. That seems to be most popular in my experience. Other gamelan teachers listening here could disagree with me. Maybe the more alus music is very popular. I'm not sure. What do you think, Pak Sumarso?
Thank you so much.
Pak Sumarso, apa pendapat Bapak? Orang Amerika lebih suka the gamelan alus or more lively?
Sumarso, you're muted.
Well, I guess it's depending on which gamelan your institution has. And in Wesleyan, of course, is happen to focus on our program on the Solonese gamelan and Jogjanese gamelan. So whether the audience like it or not, that's what we offer them to
very, very diplomatically put.
That's what we try to do is to offer the varieties of different performances in either wayang or dance or the music by itself.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pat. Yeah, that's fun.
I just want to jump in and say, as a community ensemble here in Buffalo, we're having a very good time with gamelan here, and popularity of gamelan in the community is very high, actually.
Wow, great!
Because we do a lot of performances in the community, so we do like 15 or 17 performances a year.
Wow!
All Central Javanese style, and I think people like it, but they just don't know about it because it's mostly sequestered in universities. So once you get it out there, and once you put it on social media, and once you do performances at like art festivals, and we did performances at some music festivals that are like dance music festivals, and people loved it. It was like the highlight of the festival. So I think the more exposure, the more popular it can be.
Thank you.
Oh. Okay. Cool. We have Mr. Who's next here? Ed Luna has a brief comment.
Hello, Mama Eric.
Hey.
Hey.
Hi.
Thank you, Ed.
So, so you mentioned me a couple of times, and my ears are burning at the moment. Thank you very much. But if anybody really wants to take a look at the variety of Javanese spoken in Cirebon today, I do have a very good colleague, also a UCSB graduate, Mike Ewing. So Michael Ewing is the foremost expert on Cirebonese or Cirebon Javanese.
Absolutely. He's written a book and articles about Cirebon Javanese, and by the way, is a phenomenal gamelan musician, Cirebon style, Topeng dancer. And to the best of my knowledge, the only group outside of Cirebon, though the hour is here in Santa Barbara, that performs exclusively Cirebonese music in Melbourne, Australia, where he is a professor. So yeah, Michael Ewing is the man to see about Bahasa Cirebon, as we call it.
Right.
Bahasa Jawa dialek Cirebon.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you,
yeah.
Ed.
And he was my first Topeng teacher, was Michael Ewing.
Amazing
Before
person.
I went to the palace and got to learn from Mas Tomi Uli.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Good.
One more quick comment from Vaughn here.
First of all, Matt, I'd just like to say it's great that you perform so often. Actually, with our large ensembles, maybe because the music's so esoteric, we couldn't perform that many times a year. I wish we could, and we're in Bali. Anyway, I have a quick question and just a comment. First of all, I don't know if you know, Richard, the first gamelan that came to New Zealand, where I'm originally from, to Wellington, was brought there in 1976 by my Professor Alan Thomas, who unfortunately died, I can't remember now, about 10 years ago. It was a gamelan from Cirebon. It was about 100 years old, and it's called the Gamelan of Smiles. It's really nice sounding gamelan, and it makes everyone smile when they play it. And he demonstrated it by himself because it wasn't active for many years. It was active in the 70s, and then wasn't active. Not active again right until now. Sometimes the Central Javanese group play it, but they've just done up the hall there, so they might start playing it again. And that's where I saw some similarities with the scales. It's a 7-tone pelog. Okay, my first question is, are all the pelog gamelan 7-tone in Cirebon? Because Sakati is 5-tone. That's important to note. Sakati in Bali is only 5-tone. It's different from Gong Luang. And do you know of any gamelan in Cirebon that have the unusual key order, well, people call it unusual, where there's a high key on the left-hand side and then low to high, like you see in some ancient or classical Balinese gamelan? Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
So, about
And-
Alan Thomas,
oh.
the late Alan Thomas. Yeah, I've been in contact with his widow. Unfortunately, I never met him, but he sent me recordings during his life. And his teacher was my teacher, Elang Yusuf, and he got that gamelan from Elang Yusuf in the 70s.
Oh,
So
okay,
he was
wow.
an early leader in exposing the world to Cirebon gamelan, and he's still, his writings are still a great resource. As far as arrangements of keys and things, there are little bits of that. The kanongs in a gamelan slender or pelog, frau or pelog, can be kind of random in sequence. I've watched it going, how do you know? Because we usually put high to low, right to left, just like you would for a saron or a piano. They're a little bit random, but in the sakati, the top note is not the highest note on the bona. That's the rightmost note is not the highest one. So that's kind of interesting. And there's a lot of switching of keys in pelog. There's keys on the floor. There's keys coming up. And sometimes the one we would call pitch 4 in Central Java, the bungur tone, is often at the very bottom, even though it's the middle of the scale in terms of pitch. So there's just kept on the left, possibly for convenience or because it's not used as much. As far as 5-tone, the sakati is 7-tone pelog. The regular pelog is always 7-tone pelog. But both dengung and gong renteng are 5-tone ensembles. You could say they're a kind of pelog, but I've heard such variation in renteng, some of it's slendro. But it's exclusively 5-tone. Both the gong renteng and the dengung ensembles are 5-tone only.
And I would say that on the prawa, when we play prawa, the bonang is not in a, the bonang is two rows together like that, you know, with the pots. And the 3 is in the middle and not in order because it's sort of the bridge from the high to the low. So it's not just equally, you know, the low pot to the high pot and the high pot to the low pot. There's a 3 in the middle and you have to know, your hands have to know where to go.
It's not the arrangement of Central Java bonangs. It's a different arrangement of pots.
I think it's the 3, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, the 3 on ours.
And would you consider that the gabluk is a characteristic or an essential element in Cirebon gamelan, or it's only found in the sakati? Is that right? Gabluk, is that how you say it?
Gabluk with a K, kabluk. Also called chengkung. There's an older name, chengkung, for it that's rarely used. It's the essential part of gamelan pelog. It made its way into gamelan prawa probably in the 1940s. Gamelan prawa used to be much lighter, very little bonang, or if they have bonang, it's very tiny, or the large, heavy pot instruments are in pelog. They have 2 bonangs in pelog where there's only 1 in prawa. Kabluk is a big part of pelog, a small part of prawa, but now it's gotten into gong renteng too. And there is a large katuk pot and 3 pots in gong sakati as well. So everything except dengung.
Oh, fascinating, because we have an instrument in slonding, some slonding, not in the common commercialized slonding, tanganan slonding, but in the many other slonding called gabiog. Gabiog, yeah, gabiog, they say, or gabiog with a K. And that is, but it's a keyed instrument. But then in old Samar Pagulian and in Gonga Day, you have the pongang, pongang, which it plays just like you said before, but it has different ways of playing as well. And I just would like you all to know that I think you know that we do a live stream every Saturday, normally at 3 p.m. Bali time, which is not a good time for the US most of the time. But we would change it around if there was some requests. But I'm considering doing one soon on sakati, and I'm trying to find somebody, particularly a young person who's interested in sakati, to talk about sakati. So I might talk about the one in North Bali because I can't connect with anyone on the one in East Bali yet. But if you want to join on that, be interested to hear, and Pak Samar Sam as well, and whoever's interested in this connection between the sakati in Bali and the sakati in other Java and in Cirebon, North Java. So, yep, that's all from me. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would love to hear it. Thank you.
All right, I don't see any more questions coming in, so I just have one final question. if somebody were to visit Cirebon, how would you see gamelan? When I was there in 2013, during a 2-week period of time, I didn't have success. So where can we see the gamelan? And I'm assuming Renteng is going to be the one that you're going to see more commonly, but maybe you have some other information.
Yes, you can easily go to Cirebon and think they do not have gamelan. I've heard this. No, I don't think they have anything like that. You can really miss it if you don't know some people. But I think the easiest thing to do is to visit any of the 3 kraton, because everybody knows where they are, and tell them you're looking for gamelan. And actually, Gong Renteng is not the most widespread. I just happen to be focused on it. What you're most likely going to see is a Topeng mass dance performance with either Palo or Pelog accompaniment, or a shadow puppet theater. Now they're starting to use both gamelans together because they're buying gamelans from Central Java that have both. So you probably see Wayang or Topeng. But you have to ask somebody because you won't just bump into it.
Yeah.
And typically they're for home, people hire them for a wedding or a circumcision or something like that. You come to the house and you'll see it.
And all 3 kraton have groups. So they have music groups connected to them. So if you asked at the museum, they would figure out how to connect you probably to somebody who's playing in their gamelan.
And if you look for Mama Ian, ask for Mama Ian or Mama Wario, who spoke today. They're very connected to all the artists. It's all word of mouth. But these days we've got Facebook. So you can find a lot on Facebook too. Ask me, I can help you. Anybody who's going to Cirebon wants to meet some artists, and I'm more than delighted to connect them to some performances.
Thank you, Richard. I do want to say thank you again to you, Mama Ian and Mama Wario. And yeah, wonderful lecture here tonight. And really thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Matt, for making it all possible.
Absolutely. The recording of this will be up in a few days after I edit in the examples. And next Sunday, we'll be back with Pak Borhan Sukarmo from the Sundanese Sunda Suling lecture, which will be performed. It's sort of a performance/lecture. So we'll see you all then. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Selamat malam.
Selamat malam. Terima kasih, Pak.
Selamat malam.
Selamat malam, Mas Ed.
Selamat malam semua, selamat pagi semua.
Yeah.
Selamat malam, selamat pagi di sana, ya di sini. Selamat pagi.
Malam.
Selamat jalan.
Sudah di sekolah ya? Sudah di sekolah.
Iya, iya.
Mohon maaf kalau saya ada kesalahan, Mak.
Sama-sama, Mak. Ya, sebentar ada kekurangan di sama saya juga segitu.
Yo, Mama Elangian, terima kasih banyak. Mohon maaf kesalahan saya atau kekurangan.
See you next August.
Amin.
Inshallah.
Thank you, Matt. Oh, I didn't mention my CDs. There's a link to the CDs somewhere.
Oh yeah, I saw the link. I'm gonna buy some of those CDs.
And Spotify and
yeah.
It's not even CDs anymore. It's downloads.
Just digital. Yeah. I'm gonna get some of those.
I just put the link in there again. So
wonderful. Thank you. Aduh, Ian, without you, this wouldn't happen.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I forgot. Thank you, Ian. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
There he is, the man behind the curtain.
Ian, Ian and Mama Ian.
Ian dan Mama Ian. Terima kasih, Mbak.
Ian dan Ian.
Salam buat keluarga.
Selamat malam dari Cirebon Cirebon, Mama Erik.
Iya, Mama Sultan.
Ini sangat menarik. Iya, sangat menarik sekali. Terima kasih Mama Erik yang mengangkat seni budaya Cirebon menjadi semangat bagi kami. Alhamdulillah anak saya sedang belajar sudah 5 musik dikuasai. Terima kasih Mama Erik. Semangat.
Terima kasih banyak. Aduh, hormatan besar kami ada Mama Sultan Keraton Cirebon hadir.
Oke, selamat jalan.
Oke, terima kasih.
Oke, sampai jumpa kembali.
Ya.
Selamat malam.
Okay, thank you.